What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. Yesterday, we did that massive Switch 2 Direct that went on for a bit more than an hour, and there was a lot of information packed in, so much so that I decided to divide a lot of it up into different sections over the next several days, just to try to cover all of it. And actually today we'll be discussing some of the backlash that's hit around the pricing, as well as some of the confusion that's followed along. We'll get to the bottom of Nintendo actually setting a new price point for video games, it seems. We also had a stupid amount of games that were announced, and I wrote all of them down, and we'll go over it line by line, where more than 50 games were shown off in that Direct. And then we quietly had our first look at the Switch 2 UI and the eShop, and guess what? It looks like it's at least running, well, better. All of that and more. So if you guys enjoy these videos, make sure you hit that like button. Helps out a ton. And if you're new here to the Spawn Wave channel, and especially if you're trying to keep up with all of the Switch 2 mayhem that's ongoing, make sure you subscribe down below. And of course, members for the channel do get Newswave early. If you would like to learn more about that, click the join button or the link in the description down below. And we're going to start today with pre-orders for the Switch 2, as that has become now a major concern for people online after seeing the device, because pricing aside, it does look like Nintendo is turning in a pretty solid technical device here, at least from the side of specifications and the screen and other parts of it for this handheld. Well, we can see this was posted up. Now, I first saw this by Jake Randall, who posted that Best Buy's pre-orders, those will be April 9th online and through that Best Buy mobile app. That's gonna be for in-store pickup. So unfortunately, you can't go to the store, it seems, to pre-order it. You're gonna have to fight everyone else online when those go live, which I'm sure Best Buy servers will be able to handle that no problem. The website certainly won't struggle or crash. But let's say you do get your pre-order in. Stores will open at midnight on June 5th, so you can get your console immediately on launch day if pre-ordered. Now, to me, this is good news. Not necessarily just because Best Buy is doing it, but because I feel like other locations will be following suit around this time for April 9th, and maybe even following suit for the midnight release. For me, I'd like to go into a store and get a pre-order in there in person, and I'm thinking GameStop might be the way to go for that, but I will also be trying here with Best Buy. I want to try to get another one so we can do the full teardown and check everything out about not only the system, but also the dock. But good luck to everyone. I'm sure it's going to be ridiculous trying to order this device on April 9th. Also, while there was a lot of discussion around the paid updates and upgrades for Switch to Switch 2 games, there's also a number of titles that seem to just be getting free, I guess, smaller upgrades. This you can see over on Nintendo's website, and they have a list of several games saying that the free updates to improve playability on the Nintendo Switch 2 system will be released for select Switch games. By connecting your Switch 2 to the internet, you can download free updates that may improve performance or add support for features such as Game Share in select games. The content of these free updates will differ depending on the game, and you can see a list of them here: ARMS, Super Mario Odyssey, Mario 3D World Bowser's Fury, Link's Awakening, New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe, and exactly what I was expecting, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, it appears that the update that will fix Scarlet and Violet is indeed the Switch 2. I've been joking about that for a while, but Nintendo decided to make me right, seemingly, on it. Although we'll see when all this happens and comes out and we try the update, if Scarlet and Violet can hit that illustrious 30 FPS. Oh, and we had a very interesting press release that was pushed out there for Cyberpunk 2077 Ultimate Edition on the Switch 2, which of course was part of that big Direct. But take a look at this. They go over some of the features here. Now, it does include the base game and Phantom Liberty all in one ultimate package. The game does take advantage of Switch 2's features. That includes the gyroscope aiming, motion controls, touchscreen commands, and the mouse support. And get this, they're going to have it on a 64GB game cartridge. You can, of course, do the digital download and just buy it that way, but the idea of a 64GB cartridge finally showing up from Nintendo and it being in a launch game with Cyberpunk 2077 is awesome. Like, I'm glad to see this is the case, but interestingly enough, that CD Projekt used a 32GB cartridge for The Witcher 3, and now they're also using right now the largest capacity cartridge for Cyberpunk 2077. So they've kind of been on the cutting edge of that idea with storage size for these game cards and making sure the entire game is there. Unfortunately, which I'll go over in a separate video, not the case for all of these publishers, as many of them I think are going to be leveraging what's called a game key, but more on that later. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with Nintendo and Backlash with controversy around game pricing. Now, this actually comes from Nintendo from a first-party perspective, not some third party that's trying to push the boundaries, say, of game pricing, as we've heard that maybe Rockstar and Take-Two would try to do that with GTA 6, up to $100 maybe for that game. Turns out, hey, maybe GTA 6 the whole time with Rockstar and Take-Two, they're waiting for Nintendo to set the high watermark in the market, because it appears they have indeed done that. Now, again, there was some confusion around this, but Mario Kart World appears to be the first $80 video game. Yeah, I'm gonna say it again. The first $80 video game is Mario Kart World from Nintendo. Some of the confusion around this, it seemed at first some were thinking there was like an $80 version and a $90 version. I think, again, this is going to be regional. So for me, in the US, it appears that Mario Kart World is just $80 across the board. And we can confirm this a couple of different ways. One, if we look on Nintendo's site, they pushed this out actually yesterday afternoon, after everybody's been discussing this back and forth with spotty sources and people pulling stuff from different different retailer websites. We can see this though. They go down all the pricing here, line by line. We have the Switch 2, $450. I don't think anyone's too like surprised at that price point, especially after the presentation and some of the technical details that were shown off. But when we saw Mario Kart World, I think everyone was surprised. It's $79.99. Now that seems to be across the board. It is the MSRP suggested, and I mean, of course, stores can mark it up if they want, but it's not the suggested price, and you most likely will find it at $79.99 elsewhere, even physically, which, for example, we can show here. Best Buy had their listings go live during the afternoon, and it is indeed sitting there at $80 for the physical version. Now, this seems to be the mark that they are, I guess, setting for their big titles, because Donkey Kong Bonanza is $70. Which I guess is like would have normally been the $60 game last generation, because we did get Tears of the Kingdom at $70, or it's like the $60 or $50 game, right? But Mario Kart World at $80 is not a great look. And this is certainly something where people are like, oh, it was great up until the price at the end, which, if you'll notice, Nintendo at the end of the presentation very quickly left. It was like, oh, what's the price point? We'll see you guys next time. Look out for more information later on. And this was kind of it. We'll push those details out there because it's not something that's great for us necessarily. I will say, looking at this, if you're going to get Mario Kart anyway, and I hate to say it because you're going to get it digitally then. It's just going to be a code in the box. I mean, the bundle is the way to go, obviously. Otherwise, it's $450 plus $80. You're at $530 as opposed to $500 for the Mario Kart World Switch 2 bundle. And that kind of makes the most sense for most people out there who'd be looking to pick this one up. It's almost like Nintendo is trying to push you towards that version of the system, almost like they kind of want to charge $500 for the system, but realize that it's like, ooh, that might be pushing it a little too much. Now, I will say, this feels very expensive for Nintendo, like across the board. $450 system. You look at the Pro Controller and stuff, that's what, like $80. The Joy-Cons are $90 for the pair. And then you see $70 seems to be like what's going to be their more standard rate for games. This is starting to feel more Apple-like as we go along. People have compared Nintendo to Disney for their intellectual property protection and value. They're starting to look more and more like Apple when it comes to the pricing around some of their stuff. I will say the market is way different now versus when the Switch came out in 2017, especially with these PC handhelds all over the place. I felt like $450 was about right, just based on what you see a ROG Ally or a Steam Deck or anything else being priced at. $450 seems to fit that market, but that's the cheapest system they have for the Switch 2. They've kind of rolled along here with a $200 Switch Lite for quite some time, which was great for the lower end of the market in terms of pricing. I'm curious what's going to happen when $450 is the cheapest version of the system. Doesn't really feel like something a parent would buy for their kids, but maybe Nintendo's fine with that with the Switch, the current Switch existing, maybe for more of a prolonged cross-generation period, especially with Switch games already being announced for 2026. We could be seeing maybe 3 years of cross-gen support, and then eventually they can get the Switch 2 down in terms of pricing. But whew, certainly expensive here at launch. I think many people are looking as like, oh, I'm probably spending like upwards of $700 all in for a Pro Controller, the system, some games, and then you gotta look towards that newer SD card. lot to consider there as we head towards June. Next up, let's talk about GameCube coming to the Switch 2. Exciting stuff, obviously. I'm very happy to see this become a reality, even though it was completely expected. We have the FCC stuff get out there that appeared to be that new Wavebird controller, and we've had rumors since like the beginning of time, it feels like, that GameCube would eventually make its way to Nintendo's Switch or Switch 2 platform. But here we are with the trailer. You can see it here. And we do have 3 games that'll be there at launch. This entire service, by the way, this update for NSO, will be going live on launch day, June 5th, for the Switch 2. We have The Legend of Zelda Wind Waker, Soul Calibur 2, of course, with Link as the guest character, and F-Zero GX all being available at launch. They say there's going to be better resolution, and they even mentioned clearer image quality, which almost feels kind of like a nod towards maybe specialized upscaling like DLSS, potentially. That'll be interesting just to see this in action, you know, a nice OLED display in front of you there. So I'm thinking like 4K GameCube games that are cleaned up even further. Okay, that would be really cool to see. It also has the online game chat features where you can do voice chat and I guess share screen, all that stuff with friends, as they do have a C button on the new GameCube wireless controller that will be coming as well at launch day. I will be buying, I think, at least 2 of those right away because, of course, we want to take one apart and stuff. And I just want to have one that's nice and not opened up and stuff that I can use. But they also went over a bunch of future games that were shown here. There are some good ones. Mario Sunshine, Fire Emblem Path of Radiance, Pokemon XD, Mario Strikers. The GameCube Mario Strikers was awesome. I'll be playing that constantly, especially with like online support. That'd be really cool. Chibi Robo, Luigi's Mansion, and Pokemon Coliseum. So the list here of games that are coming up is great. 3 games to start is a little light, although I do understand GameCube games a bit bigger than the Super Nintendo, even N64 games. When Nintendo drops one of these, like a Fire Emblem or Luigi's Mansion or Mario Sunshine, I mean, those are pretty large games. So I feel like they're going to do one release every month or every 40 days, and it'll feel like a big release when they do it. So that is exciting stuff. Pokemon XD is one in particular because that has just gotten more and more expensive online. It'll be cool to see it just drop into the service and people can play through the single player like Pokemon adventure game that was actually pretty interesting. So it'll be fun to see these releases as we go through at least the first year, I feel like, is what we've seen here with the roadmap. And then who knows after that? Some very, very intriguing titles, I think, that are out there for the GameCube that hopefully they can set up some deals with third parties even to get them on the system. After seeing Soul Calibur 2, some high hopes for it. Next up, let's talk about all the games that were announced in the Switch 2 Direct. And guys, I gotta go fast because there were, I counted, 54 games that were shown off here, and that's not including any of the Switch 2 enhanced titles. I think if you throw those in, it's roughly 60 games. Let's start from the top here with the Direct. Starting with Mario Kart World, of course, that is a launch game. We also have Switch 2 Welcome Tour, launch game. Metroid Prime 4 Beyond and Pokemon Legends ZA. I threw both of these in here because they're not out yet, and they're just going to have Switch 2 versions of the game, so not really falling into that enhanced games from the past just yet. We have Drag X Drive, that's summer 2025. Elden Ring Tarnished Edition. This, it seems to include Shadow the Erdtree as well with it. That's 2025. Hades 2. Then we have Street Fighter 6 Local Wireless Play New Amiibos. That is a launch title. Daemon X Machina Titanic Scion. That's September 5th. Split Fiction, that's a launch game. EA steps in with, we have the FC, and then we also have Madden NFL. Hogwarts Legacy has mouse controls, better visuals and stuff. That's a launch game. Tony Hawk Pro Skater 3+4, summer 2025. Hitman World of Assassination, that's a launch game. Project 007, we've seen it like twice, and I think it's the same trailer. Would like to see more, but good at least here to have it and it coming to the Switch 2. Bravely Default Flying Fairy, that's a remaster of Bravely Default in HD, that is a launch game. Yakuza 0 Director's Cut, newly added cutscenes, also a launch game. Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment, story leading into Tears of the Kingdom, that's coming out in the wintertime. Deltarune, that's a launch game. Borderlands 4 2025. Civilization 7, we have mouse controls, make sense for it as a launch game. WWE 2K and NBA 2K are coming to the Switch 2. Survival Kids, that's a launch game. Enter the Gungeon 2. Then we have Starseeker Astroneer Expeditions, that's 2026. Cyberpunk 2077 Ultimate Edition, as we talked about previously in the show, that is a launch game. Final Fantasy VII Remake Integrate, and then we go into the sizzle reel. We have Kunitsugami Path of the Goddess, that's the launch game. Hollow Knight Silksong 2025, great to see it there for all of 5 seconds. Story of Seasons Grand Bazaar, that's August 27th, 2025. Goodnight Universe 2025. 2 Point Museum 2025. Wild Hearts S, July 25th, 2025. Witchbrook, that's in the holiday. Puyo Puyo Tetris 2S, that's the launch game. Rune Factory Guardians of Azum, that's a launch game. Marvel Cosmic Invasion, holiday 2025. Star Wars Outlaws is 2025. Nobunaga's Ambition Awakening Complete Edition is a launch game, as well as Fast Fusion from Shinin, that'll be there at launch. This one got kind of glossed over. I would like to see this a bit more. I mean, they did some really cool stuff with the Switch 1 and higher frame rate, clean visuals. I think they're going to have a blast here with the Switch 2. Shadows Labyrinth, that's July 18th, 2025. Raidu Remastered, June 19th, 2025. No Sleep for Kaname Date, that's July 25th, 2025. Reanimal in 2025. Fortnite will be there. It's a launch title. Arcade Archives 2 Ridge Racer, it's a launch game. Professor Layton in the New World of Steam, 2025. Tamagotchi Plaza, June 27th, 2025. Human Fall Flat 2. Then we move out of the sizzle reel into the Dusk Bloods, that's FromSoft, multiplayer focused. I believe this is a PvPvE title, 2026. It's exclusive to the Switch too. Bit of a shock there for a lot of people, but Nintendo and FromSoft getting together here for a Souls-like experience next year with multiplayer elements for their new hybrid system. That's one to keep an eye on here. And then Kirby Air Riders. Sakurai coming in here with the directing it. It's been like 20 years since it came out, since the last one came out on the GameCube, and it's releasing this year, 2025. They closed out with Donkey Kong Bonanza, which I think looks awesome, like the destructible landscapes and environments. Looks like absolute chaos here. I can only imagine what some of the boss battles will look like, but it's fun to see a new 3D Donkey Kong game after the last one with being Donkey Kong 64, which is an eternity ago, and it's coming out relatively soon. July 17th, 2025. So guys, I wasn't kidding. There was a lot of stuff here. I rapid fired through a lot of it, but as I mentioned, about 54 different games, not including the enhanced titles. So Nintendo certainly showed up here with all kinds of stuff to show off for release, and a lot of launch titles as well from third parties. So certainly won't be a small selection when this system releases June 5th. That's great to see because when the first Switch came out, the current one, small lineup of titles at launch. I mean, if you look at the eShop, there's images of it. I mean, they couldn't even fill out the first page. There's like 5 or 6 games that were there or something. So this is much, much better, and it shows the difference between coming off of the Wii U and coming off of the massive success of the Switch. Turns out third parties want to be here for the successor to Nintendo's best-selling system at this point with the Switch. So exciting stuff. Good to see them at least show up with a ton of games to give you a reason to want to buy the $450 system. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about a quick look at the Switch 2 UI, which we might see more of today or tomorrow at the Treehouse, as well as our first real look at the eShop in action. So first, if we head over here to Nintendo's website, they put out a bunch of like interviews and stuff with some of the developers and creators behind it, as well as just overall how-to for the Switch 2. For example, how to purchase an upgrade pack. And people notice one of the screenshots appears to show the UI. Now you have to zoom in a bit, but it does indeed look like the Switch 1 user interface. I mean, like, to a T almost. Now it does appear they have different icons, of course. They have different animations with like the swirling circle there. So not exactly the same, but it's close, guys. I mean, I was kind of hoping for something a bit different. I mean, the current Switch UI, it works, right? It is. I mean, it's functional almost to a fault because there's really not a lot of fun bells and whistles or anything. A lot of that was removed to make it as fast as possible. But then as more and more got added on, especially the eShop, it slowed to a crawl anyway. So it's like, okay, what are we doing here? You might as well throw themes on here because it's already lagging when you get to the eShop as it is. But at least in this case, the eShop does seem to be running quite a bit better, as they showed that off in the What's New Ask Developer Volume 16 section here, where they show the eShop actually moving between different trailers and then jumping back to the product page and actually being a pretty smooth experience overall. Now, they also had on the left side feature titles. They have game finds for you. So the idea is they're going to recommend titles to you based on what you've been playing. You can also have a nice little wish list here of things set up, great deals, best-selling software, recent releases coming soon, and of course, NSO and enter code. So to me, this just looks like the kind of the current eShop, a little more added to it, but significantly smoother. And here's the thing, it's still has the amount of content that the eShop has now, since we're expecting just about all of it, minus some smaller titles here and there, to be backwards compatible and available right then and there. So you're still dealing with the same packed eShop, but it's of course better hardware. Like, I think it's significantly better hardware, by the way. They're not letting onto it just yet, but Digital Foundry will dive into it, I'm sure, and find some fairly impressive jumps over the current Switch. So what we're seeing right now is them taking advantage of it with the eShop and it just running way better, which is great because that means using it, yes, but just browsing in general is back on the table because it's like just about impossible on the current Switch. So good to see they realized that feedback and seem to have cleaned it up a bit to where it is usable now. The only disappointment for me is it doesn't really have that generation to generation change when it comes to the user interface. However, I'm sure some people out there are actually happy to hear that it's still fairly simplistic, and I have to assume extremely fast. And before we go to the comment of the day, we'll take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I ask, give the Switch 2 Direct a grade. Look at that, 61% said A, 27% said B. So, I mean, just like 88% of people are like a B or above. 9% said C, and then 4% said D. Now, I will say, I was looking through the comments, and it seemed like a lot of people said, wow, this is an A, until I saw the pricing. Technically, the pricing wasn't part of I get what you're saying, but like, they didn't go into detail about the pricing during the Direct. Afterwards, though, yes, that's when things fell apart for a lot of people. It's like, all of that looked really cool. It's like, I've said Apple before, right? That was like a comparable there. It's like when Apple shows you some really cool stuff that all just works seamlessly and you're an Apple fan, and then you get to the price, you're like, wow, that is thousands of dollars. It's not as extreme here, clearly, because we're talking about like a $450 system and then $80 games, but you get the idea. It's more expensive than a lot of people were thinking for something like Mario Kart World, and you do feel kind of like they're trying to take advantage of the situation here, Nintendo, with Mario Kart, which sold incredibly well during the Switch's life, which wasn't even a new Mario Kart. So it's like, oh, now we get the new Mario Kart. Oh, and it's also $80. Thanks, Nintendo. So I understand why, and you're like immediately like, I'm taking it down a couple notches. But for the Direct itself, 54 games, I mean, quite a few. The hardware looks great. Yeah, I'm inclined for that part to actually go with an A here because it seems like a good start to what is shaping up to be a very expensive generation. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day, which I did pull from the live stream that I did yesterday. And I gotta give a shout out to everyone who tuned in. I didn't really know how it would go because I haven't done a live stream reacting to any of the announcements or streams or directs or state of plays or whatever in a long time. But we actually capped out at just about 15,000 concurrent people. So shout out to everyone who came out for it. People who are gifting memberships like Fransby and stuff. It was awesome really just to see the community and the interaction there. But I actually pulled a comment from that, the video on demand of that. It is still up, but you can see this. It's from Azulian, who says, I hope they don't push the mouse gimmick too much. I refuse to have a table/surface to play in my bed sofa or bed. And that was the thing I was a little surprised about. No mention of an accessory for a mouse pad. And that seems almost obvious at this point to have. And I guess technically you get like a piece of wood or piece of plastic or something and just put it next to you and boom, there's a mouse pad. You feel like there's a huge markup there for Nintendo because they could probably sell people a $30 mouse pad. Nintendo brand, the whole thing. I'm just a little surprised they didn't take a shot at that, but I'm sure some third party will, or who knows, maybe eventually Nintendo does it and they have it so you can change out like faceplate things for it and it's like themed and lot of potential there for them to make money, but also people to customize the experience. It does feel like that mouse feature will be used though quite a bit by third parties and I assume first parties. Even just be able to navigate like the menu in the eShop would actually, I think, work really well with mouse support. But yeah, you're right. I don't know how well it's going to work on like a couch or in your bed. So they might want to start molding some plastic and putting together some sort of mouse pad. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. If you missed yesterday's live stream, hey, I'll leave it up here in a card. Or maybe you want to hear a bit more about how Nintendo actually confused everyone when it came to that game key. I'll leave that in a card right below it. Thanks, guys, for watching, and I'll see you next time.